Well, welcome to Menopause Chicks, everybody. Our office hours
Hi.
today is with my friend Tracy, who's a member of the Menopause Chicks community and a professional breather. Have you ever heard of that? I'm so excited because she has lots to teach us today. So why don't you take it away, Tracy?
Hi, everyone. Just a short introduction. I am a 50-year-old perimenopausal mom of three, and in fact, okay? In fact, it's my oldest daughter's 17th birthday today.
Oh,
and
cool.
It's pretty weird to think that I have a 17-year-old, right? And they go all the way down to 8, so I'm spanning the mothering phases at this point.
Amazing.
And homeschooling a grade 2. Not fun. So I am a movement coach, and my passion is helping perimenopausal and menopausal women lose the body aches, belly, and even sneeze pee without spending hours in the gym. So what I wanted to talk to you about today was working through some breathing. I love talking about breathing because, first of all, it is just such a foundational human function, okay? Next to the heart pumping, it's the thing that keeps us alive. And interesting though, there are optimal and suboptimal ways to breathe. So we're going to be looking at some of that and just seeing what is our movement pattern and habit, and is there a way to do it better? The other reason why I love talking about breathing is that it is such a quick fix. I hate using the word quick fix, but I will. It is such an easy entry into having better mechanics and better moving and better function. And when I explain to you a little bit more about what breathing involves, then hopefully this will become a little bit clearer. And all it requires is a couple of minutes practicing breathing a day. So next to alignment, which is one of the main things that I teach my one-on-one clients, we always start with alignment and then we'll go to breathing. But today we're going to do some alignment and some breathing. So what's interesting about breathing is that it is a movement. We don't really think about breathing much, right? I mean, it's been keeping you alive up until now. It's doing a pretty good job.
Right.
So far it's been successful, but what we don't realize is that there is so much movement going on in the body, right from the pelvic floor muscles to the cranium, to the skull muscles that are actually creating these small movements and everything in between. And I know before I started this work, like, I really didn't give breathing much thought. And for me, it was like this thing that just happened here. It was almost isolated from the rest of the body. But I'm going to be sharing an animation with you. We can put it down below, maybe afterwards. And when we get this idea, this sense of all the movement that is actually happening in the body when we breathe, it starts to take breathing to a whole new level of understanding and getting this idea of why improving our breathing mechanics can help. So of course we want to breathe. We want to get as much oxygen in the body though for each breath we take. And interestingly, we're breathing about 23,000 times a day. On average, right? So that's a lot of...
Sounds kind of important.
Yes. So that's a lot of opportunity for your breathing to be very healing and functional, right? For brain health, for just the whole functioning of the body, for metabolism, memory, mood. This all has to do, with getting good amount of oxygen into the body. So let's just start with a little bit of a check-in and see, well, what is your breathing strategy now? Because you probably haven't given it much thought, right?
Okay, you're right.
So put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly, just over your belly button. And just take a few normal breaths. Try not to be like self-conscious at all. And just take some natural breaths, just nothing too deep, just like normal, what we call normal organic breaths. Okay. And tell me, where is that movement happening in your body? Is it starting with your belly hand, or is it starting with your chest hand? And where is most of the expansion going on?
Definitely started with my belly hand.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the expansion is in that place that's gotten bigger lately, which is above the belly button.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So you're a belly breather, which a lot of us are. And I also see that the chest motion that is happening when you breathe is a little bit of this lifting through here, right?
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
With the neck muscles. And that is all super, super common and normal for so many reasons that we don't have time to get into today. We can look at that at another time.
It's exaggerated. I'm walking around like this all the time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then if I ask you to take a big breath, like you're going to get ready to do a big task, like you're going to pick up a really heavy box, let me have a look and see how you do that. So big breath. Right, this big, like upward lift. Okay. So what your current breathing strategy is, and this was certainly mine when I started the work, is that we're using a lot of the neck or scalene muscles. And these are our secondary breathing muscles. I'll explain to you what the primary breathing movers are. But being in this kind of, and it sets us in this almost shallow breathing pattern. Would you say that you're shallow breather? Right. So that's because we're using the secondary or extraneous breathing muscles, which are the neck and the belly. And we kind of become stuck into this habit. The problem with that way of breathing is that we cannot get full expansion into the lungs. And so you may feel, once I show you this different way to breathe, we don't realize that our body is almost under this low-level constant panic because we're not getting in enough oxygen because we're using the secondary breathing mechanics. And it's great that we have secondary breathing mechanics because it kept you alive until now, and that's awesome, right?
Yep.
But what we want to try and do is breathe better and find a pathway into the more optimal breathing mechanics, which will not only start to give you just more oxygen and help with aches and pains in your body and even pelvic floor issues and even like sneeze pee issues. Like this is the first fix for sneeze pee, is getting the breathing right. Okay, and we can maybe talk about why that is at another time. Sure. So let me just explain to you briefly with my trusty Skelly, because it often helps to get a visual idea of what's going on, especially because breathing is a whole body thing. So why I say it's a whole body movement is because there's so many muscles and bones and tendons, all these things are actually required to get what is called a 360-degree breath. We want the ribs to be opening because there's so many muscles and bones and tendons, all these things. Is it okay? We want the rib cage to be opening and closing like an umbrella. That's quite a lot of movement. So this is where movement is going on. We've got the rib cage over here. The lungs are sitting under the ribs. Under those lungs, right, under the rib cage here is the diaphragm, which is a huge muscle. And so we've got the diaphragm here, which kind of interconnects with the pelvic floor muscles down here. And then sitting on top of that, we've got our 3 levels of abdominals, and then we've got some stabilizing multidifidus muscles at the back. And all these muscles are engaged in kind of, I don't want to say proper, but in an optimal breath. So what happens when we breathe in, and we're going to go back to high school physics and biology for a second here, but I think it's helpful to understand what's going on. As we take an in-breath, the diaphragm moves down to create more space for the lungs to fill, because breathing is a volume and a shape change. When we're just breathing with the belly, when we're trying to get more breath in by making our belly bigger, all we're doing is creating a shape change. We're not actually creating any volume change in the lungs. And volume change in the lungs equals breathing, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So what we want is a mechanism or a pattern, a movement pattern that will create more volume, more space, a bigger expansion of the lungs so that there's more space for oxygen exchange to occur. So how are we going to get bigger lungs? We can't get bigger lungs by just taking the breath down to the belly. We want this diaphragm to go down so that the lungs can get big. And then what happens down here is that the pelvic floor actually is meant to lengthen. And then as we breathe in, we want the diaphragm comes up. Well, it's doing this voluntarily, whether you are aware of it or not, but it makes such a big difference. There are things that can prevent that nice moving of the diaphragm, but we'll get back onto that later. So as we breathe out, the diaphragm moves up, the lungs get small. So smaller volume and the air comes out. So underlaying all of that is this rib cage that we've got sitting on top of the lungs. So in order to get that nice big volume and small volume motion happening in the lungs, we need the rib cage to move. And in most of us, especially by the time of perimenopause and menopause, our rib cage ain't moving anymore. It is very, very locked down. Do you notice that your mid back is quite tight?
Oh, always.
Yeah, that there's very limited motion going on. And when you also showed me your breathing at the beginning, I could see that there was no motion of the rib cage. It was just up here and through the belly, right?
Right.
So the thing is, we've got all these intercostal muscles going between each rib. Those muscles are meant to be moving. They're meant to be contracting and releasing to make this rib cage, which is meant to move. There's cartilage here, there are joints there. That rib cage is meant to move. So as it gets big, the lungs can then get big. And as it gets small, the lungs can then get small. So what we're after is what's called a 360-degree movement of the lungs, where the breath is going sideways, laterally, where it's going back to front, and where there is a little bit of a lift of the rib cage. So that's what we're going to start exploring now with some exercises, because it's great to go into a yoga class or meditation and get taught these wonderful breathing strategies. And if there's time, we may even go over a few of them at the end. Breathing techniques and strategies like alternate nostril breathing and box breathing, they're wonderful. But if your body physically can't take a deep breath, then you're kind of undermining the whole like meditative and expansive point.
Right.
Place. So this is why we're stepping back and looking where movement coaching comes in to actually help the body move better. It's like it's pre-exercise exercise, if that makes sense, because we don't even realize how locked and stuck our bodies have become.
I can't wait.
Okay, so let's start. We're going to explore the first lateral movement. Just take your hands and put them under your ribs. Under your boobs, right? So we want the thumbs at the back, they're kind of feeling the back ribs, and we want to feel a nice expanse of ribs here with our front hands. Try and relax your shoulders a bit, okay? And now I want you to breathe in, but try and feel that your ribs are pushing into your hands. Give them permission to move sideways, okay? So even force them out a little bit. We never want forcing, but sometimes to get a sense of a feeling, we need to force it first. So breathe out and push these ribs sideways. Now breathe in, push them sideways. Now breathe out and close them with your hands. Make them small, okay? If you are asthmatic, have your inhaler handy and only go to your edge, okay? So make the ribs small. Now inhale. Can you feel that they're moving laterally? They're moving side to side?
Yeah, maybe
Pretty cool.
maybe for the first time in my life.
Wow. I love it. Okay. Breathe out. Make them small again. What's so interesting is that many of us, part of the reason, so keep practicing that while I talk to you, okay? Because as you practice, those muscles, those intercostal muscles that have been so atrophied are going to stop waking up.
Awesome.
What's so interesting is that if you like are 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years postpartum, and you've never been properly rehabbed after your babies,
yeah,
you're still considered postpartum. And this whole breath thing, the breathing mechanics breaks down when we're pregnant, because for months that baby is pushing your rib cage open. And then we have the baby and we're not properly rehabbed, and so we called in the trade stuck on an inhale, which means our ribs are too wide. And if you're just breathing in this shallow pattern, you can never get full lung function back. And that's why when I teach breathing, I love to start with, did you see how the first time you inhaled, you just went like that? And then I said, now exhale all the way. We're not even used to exhaling all the way. So exhale all the way, let the ribs close. I like to even do a little cough at the end. Now breathe in. Did you feel that expansion through the rib cage?
Yes.
So the brain hasn't even mapped. We've got to get the brain to map again that the ribs can actually close. Give them permission to close. It's like,
you see the look of shock on my face? Like,
I do.
You said your daughter's 17 today. My daughter will be 17 in a few weeks. It's like, has it really been that long?
Wow. So are you feeling that expansion?
I am.
Awesome. I love it. I love showing people breathing, because I know for me it was such a, oh wow, it was like just a light bulb. And so much changed. Like my back pain, once I started doing this breathing, completely dissipated. And maybe we can explain a little bit why that comes into it as well.
And how many times in our life have we been told to put our hands in our hips and that's a comfortable spot? I don't think I've ever had my thumbs in this particular part of my body. Do you know what I mean?
Have you ever had a relationship with your ribs before?
No, I've never had a relationship with my ribs. Oh my gosh. So fun.
Awesome. So that's the first. So we're talking about 3D breathing. So the first dimension is lateral. The next dimension is back to front. And what's super awesome about this dimension is that the majority of our rib is actually, the majority of our lung is sitting at the back of your body, under your back ribs. That's a whole ton of lung, right?
Right.
That's a whole, like, unexplored territory of lung function that is available to us, except we can't find it. And one of the reasons we can't find it, some of us can't find it, well, most of us can't find it, especially if we like still postpartum, is because, and let's check this out, give this a little try, many of us ladies are stuck in a little bit of a chest lift, a little bit of a rib lift. So if you put your hand, if I ask you to, like, if you're standing up and I ask you to sit straight and tall in your chair, okay? Like as if you were standing up and walking around. Like often in our chair we'll slump a bit, but stand straight, as in what, like if you were like walking into a room to give a presentation, how would you stand straight, right? Many of us lift our ribs. So if you put your hand on your sternum, you may feel that that hand is at a bit of a diagonal. And that the ribs, if you put your hand on your ribs, there's a bit of this up angle with your thumb. Can you feel that?
Yeah, definitely.
So again, this is like a post, it's a pregnancy posture that we get into that we then never come out of. And part of the reason why we don't come out of it is because we've also been told stand tall, which means ribs up, shoulders back, right? That's great posture. You may look great, but it's not alignment. Alignment is the way we work, and posture is the way we look, and they're not necessarily the same. What we want to do is have good alignment and good posture, because when you take your body out of anatomical neutral, in other words, where the position of where the bones actually belong, like Skelly, he's an anatomical neutral. Oh, I call him a he. Then the muscles and bones cannot work and do what they're meant to be doing. The other reason, so let me just help you kind of get an idea. A lot of people find it hard at first, so don't worry about it. It takes a little bit of practice. What we don't realize is that there's actually tension at the back and tension through the front that's holding our ribs up. So what I want you to try and do is just breathe in and give those ribs permission to come down and back into your body. Do you see how when I rib thrust, and I was a huge rib thruster, okay, being like yogi and a gymnast and all that, very hard habit for me to break. You see how much more how much more rib there is in the front of my body compared to the back. Now I'm going to release the tension. I'm not going to pull down with the obliques together. I'm going to release the tension. You see now I've got more equal rib at the front and the back. So if you are stuck in this rib thrust position, so try and practice that and see if you can feel it. If you're stuck in this rib thrust position, it means that there's tension at the back, and so we can't get the air into the back ribs, even if we're trying, because we're pushing them forward. So when we release the tension, drop our ribs to neutral, and a good way to measure is that the bottom ribs should line up at the top of your hip. That's how you know your ribs are neutral. And that's pretty deep into the body. But are you feeling when you do that, that you're all slumped at the top here?
I'm feeling kind of like discombobulated. Like, I don't know, we just get in such habit forming.
Yes.
And
so,
I'm sitting at my desk chair right now too. So,
wow.
I mean, it's such a terrible place to practice.
So what a lot of people do tell me, and what I felt for myself when I started this work, is when I got my ribs down, chest bone, breastbone is now more vertical, it feels like you're very rounded through the shoulders.
Yeah.
And that's because you are rounded through the shoulders. And so what we're doing is we're trying to hide what's called this hyperkyphosis, because we've spent our lives doing this since the age of 6. We're hiding the hyperkyphosis, which is the excessive rounding, by going like that, so that we look better. But it doesn't resolve the problem of the hyperkyphosis. And if anything, it makes it work. There's a separate set of exercises and program for fixing the rounding of the back. Hiding it by turning off your breathing mechanism and turning off your whole reflexive core is not the answer. So what I want you to just try and do now, just for the sake of this, of trying to get the breathing going, is let your ribs drop a bit into your body, and now exhale. Let your rib cage go small, and now breathe. And see if the air is coming into the back ribs a bit.
Yeah.
Can you feel that?
I've never had a relationship with my ribs before.
I love it. Can you feel the ribs going into the chair? Awesome. And so now your lungs have an opportunity to get bigger.
Very cool.
So cool, right?
Yeah, very cool.
So that's the second part of the 3D. I'm not going to go into the thoracic spine one because that's a bit complicated. But when people's rib cage has been locked down for so long, I'm going out of focus here. Sometimes it's not useful to just say, breathe into, like I've been in many yoga classes where the teacher said, breathe into your back ribs, breathe into your back ribs. And I'm like, my back ribs like ain't doing anything, right? I don't even know what my back ribs are. So when these intercostal muscles have been atrophied for so long, sometimes we need to do actual exercises to get them moving. So I love this exercise. I'm going to grab my chair. And if anybody's watching, if you're not in a chair, go sit in a chair and go grab a pillow or a big towel or a blanket. And I'm going to show you this awesome back expansion exercise.
Okay.
All right. Move my bolster. Okay, so we take a chair and we take a blanket of some type. Come and sit towards the edge of your chair. And you can turn sideways and do this and give it a try. You're going to roll up your blanket or your towel to whatever position works. And you're going to like shove it in your belly, and you're going to roll over your belly like this and round your spine. Even that probably, oh, that feels so good. Just round your spine a bit. Put your arms out like this to turn off those upper traps that like to do all the breathing for you. And now breathe out. Try and make your ribs small. Breathe all the way out. Cough it out. And now breathe in. And breathe out. And breathe in. Do you feel your back ribs moving?
Yeah, that felt different.
Do you feel like a stretch? So just relax your head down and get as much grounding through your back as you can. Just relax it down, arms out. And try that a couple of times. Be sure that you're exhaling all the way out. And try and give your ribs permission to go small on the exhale. How does that feel? Do you feel like stretching through the back when you inhale?
Yeah, if I wasn't having this conversation with you today, I would be like, oh man, I need a massage. This feels like a little bit of a pre-massage. This feels like what I should be doing. Well,
Yeah.
not should, I don't like to should on myself, but what I need to be doing.
And this is what I mean about, I already feel just after doing 2 of those, I was like, oh, wow, I'm all like, I feel like I've had a massage just by doing like a couple of those, because while massage and chiropractic and all these things are amazing, okay, and I love them, it's passive. It's somebody doing something to you.
Right.
So it can only go so far. And with the breath, when we're using the breath to open up, I can feel like even the position of my shoulder blades have moved after doing that. It's like it's this internal thing that's going on, and it is so powerful. And that's why I was saying at the beginning that when we breathe properly, it's more than just getting the benefit of the added oxygen. It's a huge part of the movement coaching work that I do to help people resolve their aches and pains throughout their whole body. It's so foundational. So now you want to try put all those elements together, and let's see if you can get a little bit more expansion into the rib cage. Now we want to just take a normal natural breath, okay? Because what we're doing here is training. And if anybody's interested in doing this work, all we have to do is just spend 5 minutes on it twice a day or whatever. I don't expect you to think about this all the time. It's a little bit of thought, it's a little bit of training, and it will start to become the organic, natural way that you breathe, and these dudes will calm down. Your head, because they've been doing all your breathing. They're so overworked. So let's try the 3D one more time. So we've got hands at the sides, we've got ribs down, okay, so that the back feels bigger. Breathe out. Make the rib cage small. Good. And now breathe in. Push the air back. Breathe out. Ribs small, cough it all out. And breathe in. How does that feel? Any different from when we first started?
It felt a little bit easier that time. Yeah, not as foreign.
Amazing. And did you feel like you were getting more mushrooming of the rib cage, like a little bit more movement through it?
Well, absolutely. But as I said, I think this is the first time in my life where I've actually even ever focused or thought about it. I mean, I'm going to think about you every day for 5 minutes for, the next 50 years. But um,
That is awesome. It's also great to do it in front of a mirror. And really, I don't expect massive change now, right? I'm just giving you some information and some very basic exercises to take away. This alignment one is really important. And the ribs down, because you can see how if there's any lifting of the ribs, it's stopping the back breath. And that's where the majority of the breath is going on, is in the back. That's where the majority of the potential for breath to happen is in the back. So we've got to get that back clear. We've got to get the muscles moving. So that's just one alignment aspect. I teach some other alignment points, and if people are interested in those, I have a free manual called Learn 5 Alignment Adjustments in 5 minutes on my website, and we can maybe add a link.
Yeah, we'll put that in the comments, Tracy. That's amazing.
Awesome. So I just wanted to give you, do we have time for one more little exercise?
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting because it's not actually an exercise, it's a release.
Okay.
Because what movement coaching involves is strength and release and stretch and alignment. So we've done alignment, we've done release the ribs down. I'm going to show you another. We've done stretch with the breathing. We're not going to do strength today, but let me show you another release.
Okay.
The thing is, and I'll use Skelly to, the thing is, with the ribs, so first of all, we want those ribs to be opening, right? Did you feel the ribs opening a bit as you breathe? So I just forgot to show you this one little illustration. Think of the ribs as a bucket, my trusty bucket that I'm getting more and more familiar with as the weeks go by, right? So imagine that this is a rib, that's the breastbone at the front, and the ribs actually attach to the vertebra at the back. So as the ribs move, the spine moves, which is why if the ribs don't move, we get very locked down in our spine, because those ribs are meant to be moving the spine all day long in this tiny little motion. So what happens when we start to do 3D breathing, when we start to get more movement through those intercostal muscles, the ribs are kind of lifting like that. Each rib is moving and creating more expansion. So that is what we want to try and get. If we're keeping our ribs locked down and we're just doing this neck breathing that most of us are doing, just think of it like this. It's just taking the page and lifting it up and down.
Good visual.
So the next thing I'm going to show you is called an abdominal release. And that's because, are you a tummy sucker? I know I am. And I can even see my teenage daughters. A lot of us hold this little bit of tension into our tummies and we aren't even aware of it. It's just become such a habit for so long that it's just this small little bit of tension that we hold. And even if it's a small bit of tension, if our abdominals are not at just what's called normal resting tension, it's going to interfere with the excursion of this diaphragm down as we breathe. And so if you're holding some tummy tension, then it means the diaphragm can't really move. And so now you've interfered with the whole mechanism from the get-go. So here is a good way to start to get release into the abdominals, or even to feel what normal resting tension in your abdominals is if you've been a chronic belly sucker, probably since you were a teenager. So just come on to, I don't know if you want to try this on the floor, or if you want to try it later, whatever you feel comfortable. You come onto your hands and knees, and you can see as I come down, I've got tension there, all right? So now, and this is even hard for me to do just on camera like this, but I'm going to do it. release the tension. It's a huge mindset thing. We're used to having a certain look and feel of our shape. So that's my tummy in normal resting tension. And it feels really weird because I'm used to having it a little bit up here. And I have to kind of pat my tummy all day long and just give it permission to be at normal resting tension. It's not pushing the tummy out. It's just releasing it. And if people are trying this at home, you may find that when I first started doing this, my tummy would just creep up all by itself. It would just, because we're used to this tightness, either because we want this flat line that society expects of us, right? Or because we're just so used to having it there. So, or it may be because we've been told or believe that we need to hold our abs all the time to support our spine, which is 100% not true. We need our abs to be at resting tension so that they can work reflexively to support the spine. If you're holding a muscle tight all the time, it can't do its job. So this is called the abdominal release. You just let the abs release. Awesome fix for hiccups, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. And awesome fix for constipation, huge help for irritable bowel syndrome, because if we're keeping this constant pressure in our abs, with really most of us are not even aware that we're doing it until you get into that position and you're like, oh, so that is my abs relaxed. So that's also a super easy fix. Just start to relax the belly. Take that tension out so that the abs can do what it's meant to do and so that the diaphragm can do what it's meant to do. And that is like a resolution of many issues, or the beginning of a resolution of many issues from the inside out. So yeah, that's breathing.
That's breathing. I love it, Tracy. And you know, right from when you started speaking today, I'm thinking about all of the opportunities that we have in midlife to learn and to relearn. And even the part about, you know, we've had children, but yet we don't know about our pelvic floor and how to optimize our pelvic health. And we don't know about how to breathe and how that might be impacting, you know, every cell in our body. But, you know, I was particularly thinking about people and the path they might be taking from maybe a sore back to, you know, a chiropractor or, you know, God forbid, surgery. And they go through that entire process, and how breathing might have been something that if we were taught that from an early age or even from a middle age would be something that would benefit us going forward.
Right. Yeah, because this is how children breathe. It's
right.
Everything that we land up doing or not doing, right? Because we don't realize that we are so sedentary. We have such a sedentary culture and lifestyle. We're the same DNA and skeleton as humans that existed 50 years ago or 500 years ago or 5,000 years ago, yet we are moving a fraction of the amount. And movement is not optional. Our bodies were designed in order to move. Right? We no longer need to move like we used to, but that doesn't mean that we can just drop movement. And moving, and I know I was certainly in the time frame, I was an editor and a journalist, and I worked for hours and hours and hours a day, but like I was crossing off my movement box, okay, because I was gymming it hard like 5 times a week. So what could go wrong? Everything landed up going wrong, which is how I got into this whole movement work. So even
I'm so glad you did get into this work.
So even just focusing a little bit on getting more motion, like into the ribs, if we then, because we've like turned off the movement mechanism of breathing, just starting to get that movement back into the ribs, that 3D movement back into the ribs, right, is movement that you weren't getting like a day ago or a week ago. And I'll share that animation with you, and hopefully you'll find it fascinating.
Okay, that would be great. And why don't you share with everyone right now how they can get a hold of you?
Thank you. Yes, so you can visit my website, tracyseidermovement.com. We can maybe put a link. I've got a free movement manual, a free menopause movement manual, which talks all about alignment. I also have a Facebook group called Peri Menopause and Menopause Club, Move Well, Age Well. And for Mother's Day, I've actually got a special going on, which is a pay what you can, because I know these are interesting times for all of us, 60-minute one-on-one Zoom movement coaching session. So please hit me up on that. Take me up on that. I'm dying to meet all the wonderful women in the group and just kind of explore this whole movement thing.
That is very cool and very kind. Thank you. We will spread the word for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm so glad that we could do this today. Thank you for giving me a little bit of an adrenaline rush. And I look forward to talking with you soon, Tracy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay, have a great day.
Happy Mother's Day to everyone.